Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to my channel, because today is Tuesday. It is Tag Tuesday and Booktube and a number of other niches on YouTube, so I'm catching up on a bunch of tags I've been in arrears with for quite some time, although this isn't one of the tags that's quite so in arrears. It's only from October. I was tagged at Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, and this is called the 8 Bookish Memories Tag, and it was created by Paul at the Accidental Bookseller. And I should also mention, because the day I am filming this on the 4th of November 2025, I am wearing my peace shirt because today, unfortunately, sadly, is the 30th anniversary of the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel. And if you're old enough to have, like political memories of the 90s, he was all about, peace. And, we all still hopefully hope for a world where someday we all nations live in, peace and coexistence with one another. If you will it's no dream. I've been to his grave several times in the Rabin Square in Tel Aviv, where he was assassinated. So, let's just get on with the tag. Then it's not really like a list of prompts. It's basically an open-ended paragraph talking about the bookish memories, the idea behind it, and then you list 8 books of your own. Because I have such an elephantine memory, I could do this for pretty much all of the books in my collection. Unfortunately, almost all of my books are still in storage 900 miles away, so I will have to put covers up on the screen to compensate you guys in the meantime. So, what are 8 books that you see on your shelf, or that you remember reading, where that sight evokes powerful memories regarding moments in your life or key experiences? Similar to when you hear a song and it transports you in memory to a key moment or period in your life. What 8 books do the same for you, and why? It's carte blanche on how much information someone wishes to impart or not. It's an opportunity to give subscribers a little more detail on how lives connect to books via experience. Also, it gives listeners to our book memories more information about us for when we are no longer here to tell them. Now, number 1, this should be no surprise if you watched my last video, the childhood books tag, and a bunch of my other videos. I've mentioned it a number of times. Grimm's Fairytales. This was the first book I ever read on my own. I had hyperlexia when I was 3 years old. That means advanced full-blown reading at a very young age. This is a real demonstrated phenomenon, particularly on people who are not neurotypical, as they would say nowadays. It's just part of our unique brain wiring. Theodore Roosevelt had it as well. He was 18 months old when his hyperlexia struck. He came to ask his older sister what foraging ants were. It's just I can totally imagine him doing that. He's my favorite president, and I'll get more to that a bit later. And anyway, I had this huge blast from the past when my favorite aunt and I were visiting my surviving uncle out in Denver this past July. And guess what is in the guest room? He put us up in Grimm's Fairytales on the bookshelf, and it's the exact copy I read from at the age of 3, a light blue cover and kind of a brownish, reddish or reddish brown typeface, and some kind of decoration around it, roses or leaves or whatever. That really took me back. And now, because I didn't want to get busted, I don't know if I was afraid, oh, I'll get in trouble if my parents find out I know how to read already, or if I've been reading without letting on. Maybe they wanted to I have to be a certain age, or they wanted to teach me to read and I should pretend they taught me to read, or I only learned in school. So when they came into the room, I pretended I was just looking at the pictures. There are illustrations in that book. I remember there was one page with fish. Maybe the fish were different sizes, and this went on for a while. Finally my mother started suspecting when I was 4. I think she knows how to read, not letting it on. So I don't remember this particular moment, but she's told the story a bunch of times. I was acting wild in the car, and she's like, quick, read that, pointing to a billboard. And I read it, and I got really quiet, knowing I was totally busted. And when we got home, she tested me with lots of books on the shelf and newspapers and magazines to see oh, maybe I've just been memorizing stuff from being read to a lot, and I figured out all these other words I'm familiar with on my own. But nope, I read everything perfectly, including the adult novels I had never ever read before. So it was obvious I knew how to read. And as I've said in so many videos, and I believe comments in other people's videos as well, and blog posts, reading Grimm's Fairytales at that age, the adult uncensored version. I mean, given my age, even with hyperlexia, I did not read the whole book all the way through at only 3 or 4 years old. But anyway, it taught me from the time I was like so young, like life isn't really like fair all the time. It can be so like cruel, like it doesn't give a crap about you. It can just like knock you down and drag you out. And that's why I've always been like drawn to like writing about and like reading about like so many like dark, depressing, macabre periods in history, and just like depressing, like not so like puppies and flowers, rainbows and glitter and daisies types of themes in general in my work over the years. It's just like because it was like a huge subconscious influence on me from a very early age. Now, I don't think like being an adult myself now I would necessarily like deliberately give that book to a kid, whether I'm blessed with kids before time runs out, like either biological or adopted, or just any child I'm like, babysitting, or a cousin's child or whatever. Like, oh, here, Janie, or here, Timmy, like, read Grimm's fairy tales. That's going to be great bed night reading for you. But it was really, really important on my like evolution and development. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much about this one question already. Number 2, Upon the Head of the Goat, A Childhood in Hungary, 1939 through 1944 by Aranka Siegal, which I read in April of 1995 as part of like research for a research paper I was writing for my English class, which I had at the 10th grade honors level, about Holocaust denial. Now, I ended up not using this book as part of the like the works cited bibliography, but it was like so absolutely profound in my like development, like coming back towards my spiritual birthright to live a Jewish life, my like personal like family and religious background. It's like a way too long, complicated off topic for this, but anyway, I was coming back towards like my spiritual like longing to live a Jewish life at this point in my life in the 9th grade. And this book, it was like so instrumental in my feelings. There's one scene in the book where Aranka, her name in the book is Piri, based on the Yiddish name Peril, like which means Pearl, her grandmother, living in a corner of Ukraine, which was then part of Hungarian territory. Used to call her that like when she stayed by grandma during the summer. So like she used the Hungarian nickname Piri, which is short for Piroshka, the Hungarian form of Priscilla. Sorry, I blanked on that one. And there's this one scene when she and her older sister Iboya, which is the Hungarian form of Violet, are like coming home late one night, and these like boys on the street just start like threatening them, using like anti-Semitic slurs against them. And these 2 old men like are coming out of the synagogue with their like prayer shawls and stuff, and they're saying like, don't you feel ashamed of yourselves picking on 2 little girls? And like the boys turn on the old men with more like anti-Semitic abuse and say they're like going to like kick their asses. I mean, I'm not going to obviously say like the real like things they said, because it's just like disgusting. And like and Piri and Iboya just like run home. They're so absolutely like scared, like terrified of what's going to happen, and their mother like tries to reassure them. But it's just like I felt like I were like on that street myself and being threatened by them. It's like I felt, I mean, it's just it had such a profound like impact on my Jewish soul at the time. And it also, reading that book and another book as well, I'll get to that presently, it really made me a Magyarfile, a lover of all things Hungarian, in that month of April 1995. And that's also the same month and the same year I became an Armenophile, a lover of all things Armenian. So the 30th anniversary for both of those things right now. It's kind of like, I would say, like a lower YA/upper middle grade book, and I reread it like many years later in my 30s. It's a really, really wonderful book. It like really got me started learning a lot about like Hungarian Jewish history and Hungarian culture in general. Number 3 is the Dowdy Ching, which is the only book I will be mentioning in this video I have in my physical custody. I was not putting this into storage. So anyway, this book is just, it means so much to me. It has never been out of my physical custody like ever. I even took it to UMass with me, and like when we were staying by my paternal grandparents in Pennsylvania during my very, very difficult junior year of high school. That was like the only book I had with me of my own. All the other books were in storage in my journal at the time, Rita, and like everything else I had was pretty much from the library, and like clothing, and that was pretty much it. It was just so depressing for so many reasons, and like just I love the old book smell of this. I found it on my parents' shelves in January of '96, shortly after I turned 16. And I've always like asked permission, like when I saw books on their shelves when I was a teenager. Oh, hey, can I have this? This looks interesting. Not just, oh, yoink, just gonna take it. Oh, it's mine now. But it's not like they ever missed any of the books I took from their shows with permission. Like even if I hadn't asked, like they never really like were, oh, where did that book go or something. So, they still love reading to this day. And that's a big reason I love reading myself, because my parents are such big readers and always encourage it. Just such beautiful, like simple wisdom in these pages. And I absolutely love the ancient Chinese calligraphy. One of these days I've got to get like a blank notebook big enough so I could copy the Chinese myself. And there's like a number of little bookmarks in here as well from over the years. Like Lao-Tzu and his words of wisdom mean absolutely so much to me. Are there any other little things in here? I thought there was, oh yeah, and there was two chapters. For whatever reason they were completely untranslated, so I finally looked them up in 2002 and printed them out on the computer at the UMass Hillel house where I lived at the time. And it's just so much timeless wisdom. It just brings me back. It's been one of the most important books in my life. And here's a bookmark from the tattered cover bookstore where my uncle lives in Denver. That was back when it was still a used bookstore instead of bought by Barnes and Noble, as I discovered when I went there this past year. I thought there was another thing in there. Maybe that I was thinking of a different bookmark in another book of mine. Let me just see something really good. Number 39, is that the one I like? I think it's chapter 33. And it really kept me going during that junior year of high school, thinking the strength of the spirit prevents its being used up. Just little words of wisdom helping me so much. Oh, here it is right now, chapter 31. I was blanking on the number. Good weapons are instruments of fear. All creatures hate them. Therefore, followers of Tao never use them. The wise man prefers the left. The man of war prefers the right. I think of that what you will with modern political stuff. Weapons are instruments of fear. They are not a wise man's tools. He uses them only when he has no choice. Peace and quiet are dear to his heart, and victory no cause for rejoicing. If you rejoice in victory, then you delight in killing. If you delight in killing, you cannot fulfill yourself. On happy occasions, precedence is given to the left. On sad occasions, to the right. In the army, the general stands on the left, the commander-in-chief on the right. This means that war is conducted like a funeral. When many people are being killed, they should be mourned in heartfelt sorrow. That is why a victory must be observed like a funeral. Just so many pieces of wisdom throughout this book. And this is the translation I am so emotionally attached to. Gia Fu Feng and Jane English. I mean, I know there are supposedly more literal, accurate, what modern translations out there, but just this one, I just can't imagine any other one. I'm just so wedded to it after all of these years. And now number 4 is the Glass Bead Game. Now, yes, if you remember my ranking video of Hermann Hesse's novels, I ranked this one dead last. I still stand by those views. I'm open to rereading it, but it's just wow, such a boring book, except the total exception. Why didn't he write the whole book like this at the end? The poems and the 3 live stories, which are basically stories about the main character and various past lives of his. Those were excellent. Hermann, what were you thinking writing such a boring book? But anyway, it's not the book itself, it's the bookmark in the book, and it's in real. I wish I could show you guys. All my books are in storage 900 miles away, but this was a bookmark. For whatever reason, why would this slip my mind? I returned a book about Tad Lincoln to the Guilderland Library with the bookmark still in it, and a couple of years later, when I was 13, I got that book out again when I was getting back into my obsession with the Lincoln boys, and guess what's still there? That same bookmark. Wow. And I put it in the Glass Bead Game when it was packed up with all my other books when we were moving back to Pennsylvania in August 20th, 1996. I still remember the date. Even if I didn't journal, I would probably still remember. And that's also my parents' anniversary. And so that bookmark stayed in the book, and it was still there when we got all of our books out of my maternal grandparents' house, and had all of our things again when we moved back to Massachusetts. And even after I went back to start reading that book from page 1 again when I was 24, I believe. Yeah, it was after my car accident within that first year. I kept that bookmark in the same page in the book even after I got past it, and it's still there now in storage. It's it just makes me feel all those feelings of I don't want to move. Why are we being forced to leave? I'm going into my junior year of high school and like that whole depressing thing. And it's kind of like the 1649 freeze in Russia when Tsar Alexei the Meek, he was like a total, like, not one of my favorite tsars, but not the worst, my least favorite tsar. That's Tsar Pavel. Like, he issued this like decree saying like class status is hereditary and immutable. Like, you cannot be anything other than a serf or a peasant or like, lower middle class or whatever. Like, that's you, fate, like forever. Like, you cannot have any upward mobility. You're just going to be exploited for centuries because your family were serfs. So it just reminds me of like, a moment frozen in time that can't really move on from. And number 5, a much happier book, Demian by Hermann Hesse. That was the first Hesse novel I read. I discovered it in like sometime in the summer of 1994. Like, I believe it was July, from the books on my father's old shelves. And this was like pretty much it. I mean, I did read like some books more intended for teenagers after that, but pretty much like it was all adult literature, like 95, 98, whatever percent of the time after that. And I just remember reading it in bed in the dark after lights out. And I really took a long time to like savor this book. I read it over like 8 months. I mean, the second and the third time I reread it, I got through it like really quickly. But that's just, it was, I just can't describe what that like feeling was. I said this in my video about Demian, which I did a couple of years ago, 2022, when it was Hesse's 60th yahrzeit death anniversary year in August. And so I kind of felt like I was being like transported mystically to these like kind of not paranormal, I guess, like, mystical experiences. Emil Sinclair, the main character, is having like when he's like staring into the fireplace and the embers are like forming images with his strange like kind of mystical friend Pistorius. And when he's like, in the cafe longing after this woman he names Beatrice after Dante's Beatrice, of course, just like all these, like when he's painting the bird and it turns out to look like Damien's mother, and like that when the cryptic note Max Damian sends to Emil Sinclair. I know it's kind of strange. The name of the novel isn't the main character's name; it's a friend of his, and so like he has this note: the bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is a world. Who would be born must first destroy a world. The bird flies to God. That God's name is Abraxas. Number 6 is Fragments of Isabella by Isabella Leitner, née Katz, which I discovered also in April of 1995. This was at Barnes & Noble. It was actually the updated, like, combined volume of Fragments of Isabella plus the sequel, Saving the Fragments. And unfortunately, that's yet another book in storage 900 miles away. But I read, like, both the combined volume as well as Fragments of Isabella, which I was reading fragments for the library attached to my little brother's elementary school. That branch of the Albany Public Library now has its own like separate building, but it is on the same street, like very close to that school. And so anyway, I was like reading that, and then later I found the Saving the Fragments sequel at some library or other, and I also found them in the library at the Hillel House at UMass, where I lived my senior year of university. It's like absolutely such a powerful book. It's like it's difficult to describe or explain. I felt kind of like I was being transported into that like world as well, right in there with Isabella and her sisters. And it kind of struck me like years later when I was rereading it again, like how did I never realize this? She never really goes into any much of detail at all about their experience in Auschwitz. It's more about like the emotional bonds between the 4 surviving sisters. It's not really, oh, this is what we did all day and this is our work detail and these are some of the friends we had, and we were constantly like hiding from people doing selections for admittance into the main camp, and some of that may have been because they were in Lager C the entire time, which I later came to find out it was never like intended as like camp where any real work was done. It was more of a transit camp intended for the Hungarians, and they were constantly selecting people to move into different camps, and as well as like the main camp for like actual like work details. So that's why they never had the numbers tattooed on their arms. They were only in the transit camp, and then they were like taken out to a different camp like way too late for that in like October or November of 1944. But anyway, it just like really has always like transported me back to like being 15 and coming back into my like longing to live a Jewish life and developing Magyar philia, like love for all things Hungarian, and like learning so much more about like Jewish history, like connecting to my soul's like birthright, and just It's hard to explain, but it just like puts me back in there at being 15. But anyway, that's just that book just evokes so many like emotional like it's a mood, I guess that's the word I'm fumbling for when I've read that book. It just makes me feel like I'm like there in that like terrible, like depressing mood, like time in history with the four sisters and the powerful love they shared. Number seven, 40 Presidents, Facts and Fun. Now, as you can tell from the title of that book, it was quite a long time ago. I believe I got it from a Scholastic book fair around the 1988 election when like number 41 was coming in. I'm George Bush Sr., whom I later found out to my like shock many years later, but you can't choose my family is a distant cousin of mine, so I'm distantly related to both of the Bushes as well as George Washington, who I'm much happier to be related to, but you can't choose your family. My 11 greats grandpap, John Prescott, is also a common ancestor of George Bush Sr. and Jr., so surprise, and that's the book I memorized all the presidents from the old-fashioned way, mind you. I just like wrote a list and like wrote it again and like wrote it, and then until I could fill it out completely on my own without any cheating and reading the book over and over again. I think that's the book that also started my great love and passion for presidential history, like learning all these cool details and bits of trivia about them. Presidents like Zachary Taylor, number 12, he loved his horse and he had like interesting like eating habits and like, oh, these presidents loved their animals too. And they had like fun playing with their kids all the time. And Martin Van Buren like was made to run around and gobble like a turkey in the White House for a children's party, and just so many really cool facts. And I still know all the presidents to this day, like many years later. I could do a video reciting them if you want. I am always like coming up on time, unfortunately, so I can't really take too much more time blabbing, but I would love to do a video at some point in future, like just naming all 40 of the presidents. And I just makes me angry when people these days claim, oh, I know all the presidents, and then they proceed to sing a song, like Sorry Not Sorry. Song lyrics are not actually memorizing a list of like presidents, and it doesn't require any brain power to sing and memorize song lyrics versus, oh, quick, who is like president, like, number 21, like who is number like 18. You actually have to like think through it instead of just like singing song lyrics and counting them off on your hand. That's just laziness. Number 8, I'm going to go with The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, which I found while looking through a shelf of my aunt's books when I was staying by her house in Florida. She has since moved to a different condo, no longer lives in that house. And I'd, of course, like known about the book for a while. Like, who doesn't know the famous like film and the play? And particularly for me, since I love silent cinema, Lon Chaney Sr.'s version. That's one of my favorite silents. It's one of the silents I most recommend to newbies to this sadly lost art form. Is just like such a great horror film, and it's like I can't believe it's 100 years old now this year. Like great, Halloween classic or any year round. But anyway, I was interested in reading it to see how close the film was to the book, and when I opened it, it was like a big, fairly large, maybe like 7 by 10 trim size hardcover, and I see the inscription from my aunt's ex-husband, like it's like happy holidays or happy birthday, honey. And then she saw that, it's like, you can have it, kind of laughing, as she didn't want that book reminding her of the ex-husband in the home anymore. And so I took it. And the reason I'm including this on the list, because it reminds me, I was reading it when I was called for jury duty in the courthouse in Troy, New York. This must have been in like 2005, I would have to say, like maybe like 2006 or so, after all the many like leg surgeries I had had and not being able to walk for 11 months. Like, I know this sounds terrible to admit, but I wore my walking boot to the jury duty, as well as taking the book with me as reading material during like lunchtime or like between recesses if I should be called to be a juror. Like, I mean, legitimately, I did still have trouble walking at that time. I did like need the walking boot. Sometimes I couldn't walk entirely unassisted yet, but I kind of figured, oh, if they see someone with a walking boot, maybe they'll like decide, oh, that person can't really sit for jury duty. There's like a medical reason. They had to like, wand up my like walking boot to make sure I wasn't smuggling anything, and I had to explain what it was. And so anyway, I was like, reading the book at the courthouse when I was there, and they did like decide to let me go as a juror, not just so much because of the walking boot, but because like it was a case involving a car accident. They felt, oh, someone who's been in a car accident herself can't really be that impartial. Thank you very much for watching all the way through to the end. Leave me a comment down below. Have you guys read any of these books? What are some of your own like bookish memories or books that evoke powerful memories in you? I could do this for so many other books in my collection. So like, thanks again for watching. I will see you soon. Bye.